Welcome back to Inside 2016. I'm Charlie Sykes. We're talking with the presidential candidate, Ted Cruz. I have to ask you this question going back to what we were discussing earlier, what happened this week. As a Cuban American, what was it like watching Barack Obama posing in front of a mural of Che Guevara and then going to a baseball game with Raul Castro after those terrorist attacks in Brussels?
You know, it's just sad and it was pitiful. For a long time, leftists have idealized the Castros in Cuba. They've held out these communist dictators as these chic heroes where Hollywood loved to hold up Che Guevara as, oh, look, wasn't he a handsome, unshaven revolutionary? Never mind that the man was a homicidal maniac who tortured and murdered vast numbers of people. And, it really was sad to see the President of the United States travel to Cuba with Hollywood movie stars, with rock stars, and lend the legitimacy of America to an absolutely cruel and repressive regime that has murdered, that has tortured for decades. Not only that, it was even sadder to see President Obama stand at a press conference next to Raul Castro while Raul Castro attacks America. And then the President of the United States doesn't defend America. He says, well, gosh, I agree with you on your attacks on America. I don't think it's asking too much to have a President of the United States who will defend this nation and not side with communist dictators against our country.
I want to get back to some of the substance in this, in the presidential race. In fact, one of my disappointments of this race is that we haven't talked more about ideas and issues.
Yes.
But of course, a lot of us have been sidetracked. And I did want to ask you specifically, yesterday, Donald Trump put out a tweet in which he very directly threatened your wife, Heidi, saying that he was going to, I think the quote was, spill the beans on her. Your reaction, Senator Cruz?
Well, listen, I think it was sad and it was predictable. I mean, we've seen a pattern with Donald. When he gets scared, when he gets rattled, he reacts by yelling, by screaming, often by cursing, and by attacking whoever he can, insulting whoever he can, and trying to bully people. And so yesterday, a PAC that I have nothing to do with, I don't know the person who runs it, I've never had any involvement with it, a PAC sent out a tweet criticizing his wife. They shouldn't have done that. That tweet was inappropriate. But we had nothing to do with it, and Donald responded by attacking my wife, Heidi, directly and going after that. And that was just, to see him going after Heidi. Heidi she's the daughter of Christian missionaries. As a little girl, she lived in Africa. She is an amazing mom. We've got two little girls, Caroline and Catherine, who are 7 and 5, and Heidi is just an unbelievably loving, wonderful mom, wonderful wife. She's my best friend in the whole world. And I have to say, for Donald to go after Heidi, I think is despicable. And it reveals a lot about his character. But I'll tell you also, folks were asking me today, well, is Heidi upset that Donald Trump went after her? And listen, Heidi has been in the business world for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. She's dealt with a lot of garbage in the business world. Women professionals deal with a lot of nonsense. She's seen bullies her entire career, and I'll tell you, Heidi Cruz is not scared one iota by a bellowing Donald Trump.
This is the question that I have to ask you, though, because back in December, and you will remember this, you put out a tweet saying the establishment's only hope was Trump and me in a cage match. Sorry to disappoint. Real Donald Trump is terrific. Now, some of us were trying for months to sound the alarm about the threat that Donald Trump posed to the party. Mm-hmm. What took you so long?
Well, listen, there is a season to politics. Today is actually the one-year anniversary of when we launched our campaign. We launched it on March 23rd, a year ago. And if you look at, there were 17 candidates in this race. It was a wonderfully diverse, talented, dynamic, young field. And it really incredible talent. if you look at a number of the candidates that took on Donald Trump early on, they ended up as roadkill.
Right.
Our objective was simple from the beginning. It is to win this race, to win the nomination, and then beat Hillary Clinton and turn this country around.
And not be roadkill.
And not be roadkill. I am very strongly committed on the anti-roadkill approach.
Okay.
And so our approach was quite simple. We needed to build our base first. We needed to get my positive message out, my record out, and build and assemble our team. We've now got over 260,000 volunteers nationwide. We've received over 1 million contributions, people going to tedcruz.org, and that army of grassroots Republicans, grassroots conservatives across the country is where our strength comes from. And then starting at the beginning of this year, I began drawing sharp contrast with Donald. Now, I make a difference. You know, Donald, when he's upset, he insults, he ridicules, he attacks your wife. He goes into the gutter immediately. I have not and I will not respond in kind. But my focus, what I do think is legitimate, is a focus on the issues. So, for example, we talked a minute ago about the differences in foreign policy. I'll talk about foreign policy. I'll talk about domestic policy. I'll focus on issues because I think the American people are not interested in politicians bickering like children. And, for example, I have zero interest whatsoever in any parts of Donald Trump's anatomy. And I'm not going to be talking about him.
All right, along those lines, when Mitt Romney, you have fine-looking hands, by the way. When Mitt Romney endorsed you,
well, thank you.
And you've read this. He said, "Today there is a contest between Trumpism and Republicanism. Through the calculated statements of its leader, Trumpism has become associated with racism, misogyny, bigotry, xenophobia, vulgarity, and most recently, threats and violence. I am repulsed by each and every one of those." Do you agree with that? And if you do, how can you say that you would support Donald Trump if he was the nominee? How can you support him for President of the United States?
What I agree with is that the policies Donald is supporting are not going to fix the problems we have in this country. He's very good at yelling about the problems. But he has no answer. He has no answer to bringing jobs back to America. He has no answer to stopping illegal immigration other than yelling about it. I would give an example. If you have a car that's broken down, you don't really want someone to go into the driveway and scream and curse at your car. You want someone to lift the hood and fix the engine. And Donald has no idea how to do so. So, for example, he talks a lot about jobs going overseas. You ask him, "Okay, Donald, what's your solution?" And he says, "We're going to put a 45% tariff on all goods coming from China." Now, a tariff is a tax, and that tax is paid by American consumers. And so if Donald did what he says, everyone in Wisconsin, when you went to the store, when you went to Walmart, you would see your prices go up 45%, the price of diapers, the price of clothes. You want to buy an automobile, the price of your car would go up 45%. At a time when Americans are hurting, jacking up our taxes 45% on everything we buy is a terrible policy, and it would inevitably result in a reciprocal trade war where China then puts tariffs on our goods. And we saw that before with Smoot-Hawley, where we had a worldwide trade war that exacerbated the Great Depression. Now, in contrast, I've laid out a very, very detailed tax plan. It's a simple, flat tax.
I want to talk. We have to take a very, very quick break, and I want to specifically ask you about that because I don't have any more questions about Donald Trump, so we can actually talk about the issues of the campaign. Let's take a short break. A conversation with Senator Ted Cruz continues. You're listening to News Radio 620 WTMJ. I'm Charlie Sykes.